All right. Now, I would like to invite our generosity team, Kay, Claudia, and Marion, up with a timely message for you.
Hi. Hey, Kay, what's happening on February 1st?
Or March 1st?
March 1st.
Okay.
As Katie would say, just the way I practiced it.
Well, hey, Marion. That just so happens to be the start of a very important annual pledge drive for this church.
Pledge drive? What is a pledge drive?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Claudia. It's the time of year that we ask our church community to support what they love by pledging their financial support for the upcoming year.
Well, I love this church, and I want to support what I love. How can I make a pledge?
Well,
Oh, thank you, a bookmark.
you'll notice the bookmark in your order of service today, but also you'll be getting a packet of information in the mail. And two, don't forget to read your e-news. And you can also stop by our table in Hobbs Hall for more information as well.
We would love to talk to you at the generosity table in Hobbs Hall after today's service and for the next 2 weeks. And we have some sweet treats there that you won't be able to resist.
1, 2, 3.
Support what you love.
Thank you, team. Now, let's take a moment to breathe, to be fully present in this time and place, to enter into community, and to invite the Spirit to be present among us as we open our hearts to life and the gift of this day, as we reflect on the history of Unitarian Universalism and the love that is the center of our faith. Come, let us worship together.
Thank you, Benny, for sharing your musical gifts with us. Today and next Sunday, we will be exploring core questions about our denomination, Unitarian Universalism. These services are inspired by a proposal to restate our collective understanding of why we exist as a denomination, what we value, and how we want to be in covenant with one another as we live out our mission and values. Today, yeah, some of you, I saw that reaction, oh my goodness. Today, we will reflect on the historical roots of Unitarian Universalism and sketch out the proposal for how we might restate the core values of our faith. Next Sunday, we will continue the conversation as we reflect further on the identity of our faith. If you grew up in a different religious denomination, where faith leaders clearly articulated what their members were expected to believe, these sermons might seem a bit confusing. You might be thinking, don't these folks already have a common religious creed? What brings them together every Sunday morning? It turns out these are excellent questions. We often say that our faith believes revelation is not sealed. This captures the idea both that our own individual understanding of faith matters, as well as our denomination's statements about what we collectively believe and value can evolve over time. These sermons are an invitation to ask, what does it mean to be a Unitarian Universalist in 2023? As Unitarian Universalists, we light a flame within a chalice to unite us in worship and to remind us of our ongoing search for the light of truth within us and among us. The chalice is also a light to guide us on our shared journey and a reminder that we are all interconnected in the great web of existence of which we are a beloved part. And I believe Meredith was going to come help us with lighting the chalice today. Thank you, Meredith. As Meredith lights our shared chalice, I invite those on Zoom to light your home chalice. And I invite everybody to please join in the words for the chalice lighting adapted from James Villa Blake, which you'll see here on the screen and if you're in the sanctuary in your order of service as well. Please read with me. Love is the spirit of this church and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, to help one another, and to bring about the beloved community.
As we take our seats, I'd like to invite the young and the young at heart to come up front to help me be an archaeologist this morning. Hi, Katie. Benny. Hi. Hi, everyone. So does anybody know what an archaeologist does?
They dig up fossils and things from past ages.
Yeah, they study the past and history, and they dig up stuff. Yep, I was thinking about things that changed this week, and I started to think about how much technology changes. So I've seen it change over and over in my lifetime. Have you noticed it change in your lives? Remember the thing there on the left? So does anybody collect fossils? Oh, Amanda, you collect fossils? Morgan, I know you collect fossils and rocks, don't you? You what? Ooh, wow, cool. All right, so this week, in my copious spare time, I decided to go on an archaeological dig in our church building. And I found some pretty cool fossils. Would you like to see them? Yes. Okay. Well. CDs? Yeah. Okay. So what is a cassette for? What is this thing for? Music. Yeah, it records music, doesn't it? Or it did once upon a time. And same with the CD, right? Right? Okay. All right, now, you ready for more fossils? Yes. Of course you are. Ooh. Yeah, it's old. I bought it when it was new. And, ooh, and it's an unwrapped copy, or an unopened copy. Okay, and now, of course, we have Netflix, MP players. Is that ancient history too? Okay, well, I'm just sitting here thinking maybe I'm a fossil. Okay, so we have, right? What's what is this? It's a disc. You know what it does? You record stuff on it. You save data on it. It's like a 3D save button. You put it in, yeah. Justin's looking at me like, what? And a little more recent history. Thumb disk, right? What's that? Well, this is something, yeah, pop it like that, stick it in the computer, and then you record all kinds of data from your computer on it. Or at least you did until there was Google Docs, which we all use, and the cloud, of course. So, aren't those great fossils? Aren't those cool? So we had a cassette, CDs, MP3 players, and whatever technology is these days, I have no idea. But what stayed the same about all those things? Any idea? Katie? They all do things with music. We can listen to music different ways. That stayed the same, right? Okay, then we had VHS tapes and DVDs, and now we have Netflix, of course. Technology has changed, but what stays the same? What do we want to do? Morgan? Yeah, but we want to watch movies, don't we? Yeah, okay. So we had a floppy disk and thumb drive and Google Docs and the cloud. Once more, we wanted to be able to save information. What is most important in all of these has stayed the same. We do the same things, right? But we found new and better way, hopefully better ways to do them. So in Unitarian Universalism, we've been using the same 7 principles as our technology, which helps us understand our faith, since 1985. That was a long time ago. By the way, that's when people made the switch from cassette tapes to CDs. And the 7 principles are a tool, too. What do they help us do? There are 7 principles on the left in a beautiful graphic by one of my colleagues. So what are those 7 principles help us do? Live into our faith. Exactly. Yes, Katie? And love, yeah, most important of all, which is what we're really talking about today, aren't we? Yeah. So now a team of leaders is doing some work to help us come up with some new technology for our faith, which you see there on the right side. You see the graphic there? So we're going to have to figure out if this new technology, these new values, are going to be how we live in our UU values, our faith in the world. It's a lot to think about, and it's change, and that's hard, right? Who likes change? Oh, we got a few hands. Huh? Oh, not the jingly change, the fact that things are different. Sorry, Justin. So it can be uncomfortable as things are changing, and like any time we learn, it'll take us a while to adjust. But we also know that as long as we commit to move forward together in love, right, Katie? Yep. We can change and change and change some more. But what we love the most, the fact that we're together, we're Unitarian Universalists, and we can make a big difference in the world, that's always going to stay the same, isn't it? Yep, okay. In the midst of our busy lives, in the midst of so much change, and there's been a lot of it, it's important to care for our spiritual lives. So we take time each week for shared stillness. It's an opportunity to pray if you wish, to reflect, to feel gratitude, to meditate, or to simply be. This helps us remember who we truly are, reflect on our lives, and connect with the sacred mystery that is the heart of life itself. So now let's enter our time of stillness and find that place within us where love lives and calls us into fullness of life. Part of our life's experience is struggle, loss, difficulties. As a community of compassion and care, we take time to share those things that are on our hearts right now. If you're on Zoom and have a sorrow, loss, or struggle to share, please use the chat box. Dave and Diana share concern for our good friend Anne, who is caring for her seriously ill husband at home. Lori Merkin McGee asks for prayers for Lori Goldstone Merkin as she battles brain cancer. And the Casper family shares a sorrow of the loss of their dog Elvis. Always hard to lose a four-legged. If there's anyone on your heart and mind this morning, you're welcome to speak their name out loud now. Barb Springer asks special concern for Diana as she returns from New Zealand, unfortunately with her husband who died on the trip. We hold them in our hearts. These are the words of Reverend Fred Small. How do we endure these troubled times? How do we respond? How do we survive? What carries us in times of fear, of uncertainty, of difficulty? Only love. The only response, the only cure, the only true defense against fear, anger, pain is love. We cannot hold back the tide of suffering. We cannot close the door to the cries of the oppressed. We cannot control the desperate actions of others. We cannot control the fearful, vengeful, violent politics of governments, even our own. We can work for systemic change, and we will. But we know all too well the powers and principalities arrayed against us. What we can control, what we can choose, is the ground on which we stand or fall. We can choose love over fear. We can choose compassion over vengeance. We can choose inclusion over exclusion. We can choose peace in our hearts. Love is why we are here. Here on this earth in these fragile and temporary bodies, here in this church this morning, here in this country, this city. Love is why we are here. Love is why we worship, why we gather in fellowship, why we care for others in need. It's why we work for justice. Only love. Only love. There have been moments of joy, wonder, and awe in our week as well. We've experienced moments that have lifted our spirits. If you're on Zoom, you're welcome to share any joys via the chat box. And Elaine wishes a happy birthday, as we all do, to Jan Noden and to John Murphy. Happy day to both of you. Now, with gratitude for these and every blessing we receive in life, for the gift of life itself, for the companionship of each other on our journey, for the beauty of our world, and for this day of possibility, let us raise our hearts in gladness and together say, Amen.
Hearts open, minds awake, change us now for heaven's sake. Leave us not alone in hatred's wake. Show us how to love, show us how to love, show us how to
Hearts open, souls awake, rules we made, we now must break with our very own lives at stake. We must learn to love. We must learn to love. We must learn. We must learn to eyes open, shocked awake, much to learn from our mistakes. Draw us closer in our heartache. Show us how to love. 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 Show us how. To
All right, class. Now, I know this week you've worked hard studying your UU polity and governance, right? So we have a pop quiz. All right, and you're welcome to shout out the answer if you know or you think you know. In what year did the Unitarians and the Universalists consolidate to become the Unitarian Universalist Association? 1961. Yeah. All right. True or false, Article 2 of the UUA bylaws includes Robert's Rules of Order. Robert's Rules are actually one of our holy books, but they're not in Article 2. All right, now, Article 2 of the UUA bylaws includes A, rules for lighting the chalice during the service, B, the 7 principles and 6 sources, or C, a requirement that all UU congregations serve fair trade coffee after services. What's your answer, class? It's B, the 7 principles and the 6 sources. When was Article 2 last revised? Close enough. It was actually done in 1987, but in 1985 is when it started. All right. True or false? The 7 principles and 6 sources in Article 2 are a creedal test for membership in the UUA. False. Because no creedal test shall be required for membership. And a bonus question. In what state did the first legal same-gender wedding in the United States occur, and it was in a UU church? Massachusetts. All right. Very good, class. You've passed. And speaking of the UUA bylaws, Article 2, Section C2, Kathy will read them as they currently stand.
And if it's a lot to hear, I'll just remind you these are in the front of the gray hymnal as well. Section C2(1) of the principles. We, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, acceptance of one another, and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all, respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. We also have a statement about the sources that we draw from in our faith tradition, which are also listed in the front of the gray hymnal. The living tradition which we share draws from many sources. Direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder affirmed in all cultures, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces which create and uphold life. Words and deeds of prophetic people, which challenge us to confront powers and structures of evil with justice, compassion, and the transforming power of love. Wisdom from the world's religions, which inspires us in our ethical and spiritual life. Jewish and Christian teachings, which call us to respond to God's love by loving our neighbors as ourselves. Humanist teachings, which counsel us to heed the guidance of reason and the results of science and warn us against idolatries of the mind and the spirit. Spiritual teachings of earth-centered traditions, which celebrate the sacred circle of life and instruct us to live in harmony with the rhythms of nature. grateful for the religious pluralism which enriches and ennobles our faith. We are inspired to deepen our understanding and expand our vision. As free congregations, we enter into this covenant, promising to one another our mutual trust and support. The next section of this Article 2 states the purposes of the Unitarian Universalist Association, our national body. The Unitarian Universalist Association shall devote its resources to and exercise its corporate powers for religious, educational, and humanitarian purposes. The primary purpose of the association is to serve the needs of its member congregations, organize new congregations, extend and strengthen Unitarian Universalist institutions, and implement its principles. The next section, hang in there, we have 2 to go, is titled Inclusion, and it says, systems of power, privilege, and oppression have traditionally created barriers for persons and groups with particular identities, ages, abilities, and histories. We pledge to replace such barriers with ever-widening circles of solidarity and mutual respect. We strive to be an association of congregations that truly welcome all persons and commit to structuring congregational and associational life in ways that empower and enhance everyone's participation. And finally, the last section addresses freedom of belief. Nothing herein shall be deemed to infringe upon the individual freedom of belief which is inherent in the Universalist and Unitarian heritages, or to conflict with any statement of purpose, covenant, or bond of union used by any congregation, unless such is used as a creedal test. So when you hear Article 2, that's what they're talking about, is the current version. And what's being talked about is whether to replace some of that language. So I'll leave that for the sermon part. But just to put that in context for you. We've changed the second reading. It's not what's listed in the order of service. Our apologies about that, but it is on the slide here. It is a reading titled Love by Adrienne Marie Brown. If love were the central practice of a new generation of organizers and spiritual leaders, it would have a massive impact. If the goal was to increase love rather than winning or dominating a constant opponent, I think we could actually imagine liberation from constant oppression. We would suddenly be seeing everything we do, everyone we meet, not through the tactical eyes of war, but through eyes of love. We would see that there's no such thing as a blank canvas, an empty land, or a new idea, but everywhere there is complex, ancient, fertile ground full of potential. We would understand that the strength of our movement is in the strength of our relationships, which could only be measured by their depth. Scaling up would mean going deeper, being more vulnerable, and more empathic.
My first experience with Unitarian Universalism was in 1996 in a small town in Southern Oregon. My partner at that time and I were seeking community, so we decided to go to church. I was still an Episcopalian, although I no longer considered myself Christian, and I had strong pagan leanings. He was Jewish, so we wanted a spiritual community where we'd both be comfortable and would be welcome as a gay couple. When he suggested the local Unitarian Universalist congregation, I was open to trying it, even though I'd never heard of Unitarian Universalism before. After what was a fairly typical Protestant worship service, although lighting the chalice was a new ritual I'd never seen, and that was the first time I heard someone refer to prayer as focusing your collective consciousness, I greeted the minister afterwards. I let her know I was a first-time visitor that morning. She replied, "Our service was weird, wasn't it?" It was different. She escorted my partner and me to coffee hour and introduced us around. We were warmly welcomed, and spiritually, I knew I was home. And I hope that you felt the same way you first attended this church or another UU congregation. And maybe if you're here today for the first time, you might get a sense that this could be your spiritual home too. But it would be many years before I learned about the things that make Unitarian Universalism unique and give us something to share when we're evangelizing. You are going door to door to share the good news of our faith, aren't you? There's the 7 principles. There's the all-embracing love from our Universalist tradition and the reality that we are interconnected from our Unitarian tradition. This is our core theology. We're a denomination held together by covenant, the promises we make one another, instead of a creed, doctrine, or dogma. And there is the freedom and responsibility of an individual search for truth and meaning, our 4th principle, instead of being told what to believe. When our 2 predecessor denominations, the Universalist Church of America and the American Unitarian Association, joined forces in 1961, and incidentally, that was after 100 years of conversation and talking about consolidation. So the next time things take a while around here, keep that in mind. We call that the speed of church. Part of the process of consolidating was to create a statement that would express what this new association stood for, what UUs believe, and what message we have to offer the world. Out of the desire to craft a statement about this faith came 6 principles as part of the bylaws of the UUA, Section C2. Major changes to our principles came in the early 1980s as women found their voices and took the lead in pushing to revise the principles to make them more inclusive, arguing that the use of mankind doesn't recognize women as human beings. It was during these revisions that the principles grew from 6 to 7, and 5 sources of spiritual wisdom were added to preserve the religious heritage of both the Unitarians and the Universalists, and to acknowledge the diverse theologies that inform our religious pluralism. The 6th source, recognizing earth-centered traditions as a source of spiritual wisdom, was added in 1995. As Kathy mentioned, you can find our principles and sources in the front of the gray hymnal. Section C2 of our bylaws is unique. There are special requirements for changing it, including a provision for reviewing it every 15 years. This is both to prevent the danger of the principles becoming a creed. It's been said that we are dogmatic about being anti-dogmatic. And because ours is a living tradition, it evolves in response to our changing world. We believe that truth continues to be revealed as we live in the questions rather than rest in the answers. In 2017, it was recognized that our principles needed to change again, and discussion began about adding the 8th principle as we wrestled with the need to go beyond aspirational principles to an active commitment to dismantle systems of oppression. In 2020, the UUA board appointed an Article II study commission to lead a discernment process for our whole association about our core values, our covenant, and our purposes. The board gave the commission a broad charge: review, change, or reimagine Article II to enable the UUA, our member congregations, and our covenanted communities to be a relevant and powerful force for spiritual and moral growth, healing, and justice. The proposed article includes a statement of the UUA's purposes, its values and a covenant, and statements about inspirations, which are a summary of the sources, inclusion, and freedom of belief. So here we have a graphic which captures the proposed statement of our values. This would replace our current 7 principles language. So I'll share a little about each of these. Love. Love is the power that holds us together and is at the center of our shared values. We are accountable to one another for doing the work of living our shared values through the spiritual discipline of love. Interdependence. We honor the interdependent web of all existence. We covenant to cherish earth and all beings by creating and nurturing relationships of care and respect. Pluralism. We celebrate that we are all sacred beings, diverse in our culture, experience, and theology. We covenant to learn from one another in our free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Justice. We work to be diverse, multicultural, beloved communities where all thrive. We covenant to dismantle racism and all forms of systemic oppression. Transformation. We adapt to a changing world. We covenant to collectively transform and grow spiritually and ethically. Generosity. We covenant to freely and compassionately share our faith, presence, and resources. And equity. We declare that every person has the right to flourish with inherent dignity and worthiness. The denomination is now in the process of conversation about the proposed changes to Article 2. Congregations are encouraged to have conversations to gather input from their members to inform their General Assembly delegates. There will be opportunities for delegates to recommend amendments to the proposal, which include a mini-assembly in May and a General Assembly, which is in June. The UUA Board will also be able to recommend amendments. Amendments from delegates and the Board of Trustees will be prioritized and placed on the General Assembly agenda for consideration. The final version of Article 2, as amended by the Board of Trustees and/or the 2023 General Assembly, will receive a simple majority vote. To move forward for a final vote at the 2024 General Assembly, it has to be a simple majority. At the 2024 General Assembly, for this to be adopted as the new Article 2 of the UUA bylaws, it will take a 2/3 majority vote. If either vote fails, a similar proposal will not be considered for 2 years. Many of us in this room, including me, have only ever known the 7 principles as a theological statement of what it means to be UU. I've been studying the proposed Article 2 changes, and I'm not sure how I feel about them. I have questions, as I imagine you do, concerns about our UU identity, and I don't know how these changes will affect us as a congregation and an association. Will they help us live into our shared vision for Unitarian Universalism? Will replacing our principles with a statement of values allow us to finally become the inclusive faith we say we want to be? I don't know. What I do know is that whether we change Article 2 or not, love needs to be at the center of our faith, a mature love that calls us to care for one another, especially those who are most vulnerable and on the margins, to care for our fragile planet, to work to end the systems of oppression that prevent all of us from living fully, to create peace and true justice. In the second reading, Adrienne Marie Brown said, "If love were the central practice of a new generation of organizers and spiritual leaders, it would have a massive impact." Let us be a congregation, a people and an association where love is our central practice, so that our faith leads the way toward the beloved community. May it be so, and may love guide us in making it so together. We'll take a few moments of silence to reflect. It is love that brings us together, love that invites us into our shared life of worship, community, and ministry as we all participate in the circle of giving and receiving. We thrive because of your generous gifts of money, time, care for each other, and recognizing that we are all interconnected. Thank you. Love invites us to help others in our community thrive as well, so we give to agencies and organizations in Kent and beyond that serve those in need. February's special offering is for the Portage County chapter of the NAACP. The NAACP's mission is to ensure the political, educational, social, and economic rights of all people, and to eliminate racial hatred and racial discrimination. In the spirit of gratitude for the gift of each other in this community and the abundance that makes generosity possible, we now give and receive the offering as a sign of our shared commitment to the life and work of this congregation and beyond. Will the ushers please receive the offering?
Unitarian, Universalist, walking through the door just gives my heart a lift. People ask, what kind of church is this? Unitarian, Universalist. Who knows what? I can't walk or talk the list. A Unitarian, Universalist. I hold the never-ending question of the hardest beat insists. I'm a Unitarian Universalist. Even though what you say might not be what I know, we sit all together. Every Sunday we go, searching through our lives for the mystery of loving, sifting through the time like an old-fashioned coven. I know this is my church, eternal talking about. These are all my people, our voices singing and shout. Unitarian, Universalist, standing all together, we offer the world a gift, the all-important question of eternal compassion. See the morning star rising on the living tradition of Unitarian Universalism. Hey, Blaine, where have you been for a year and a half?
Surfing the tides.
Surfing the tide. Dude, Unitarian, Universalist, walking through the door just gives my heart a lift. People ask, what kind of church is this? Unitarian, Universalist.
Love calls us out into the world to share the good news of our faith. So to prepare to do so, let's bring our time of worship to its close as we extinguish the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. May we carry these in our hearts and minds until we are together again. I have three very brief announcements for you. First of all, Jen will lead an advanced directive workshop in Hobbs Hall at 11:30 this morning. This will help you discern about creating medical instructions for others in the event you're not able to make your own decisions. Lori Merkin-McGee and I will be teaching a 10-week Building Your Own Theology class starting on March 7th. Please contact me to sign up for that if you'd like to do some work on what it is you believe and how you make meaning of life. And then finally, part 2 of our series about changes to Article 2 will be led by Kathy next week, and after that, she will lead a discussion about these proposed changes. So please join us. Now I offer you these words of John Morgan. In the end, it won't matter how much we have, but how generously we have given. It won't matter how much we know, but rather how well we live. And it won't matter how much or what we believe, but how deeply we love. And now, trusting the love that embraces and sustains us and calls us into fullness of life, let us go forth with hope and joy as we continue to inspire love, seek justice, and grow together in community. May it be so. Blessed be. Amen. And I see love's light in you.